Alright, welcome to our fifth and final match with Brain Control. We are on the play again. Which is a big deal in Modern. We see this hand, so we have the combo. We do have a push that we can't cast, although we can cast it off of Brain in a Jar. We can activate it off of Quarter. I decide to keep on the play. We've been hitting our combo pretty consistently against the decks that are showing up at the moment, so I'm going to do this. We see Eldrazi Temple, so I'm just going to play out Brain in a Jar. I'll get black for Fatal Push just in case. We don't know that we're against Bant, but we do now know. Bant are colorless. So our opponent is not playing a Thought-Knot Seer, which is great for us. Plays a Sky Spawner. And probably, so we could let this live. The issue is our opponent has Eldrazi Temple. May or may not have a second one in hand, but if they were going to play Thought-Knot Seer, they would have played the second one. If they have Smasher, right, quartering this might be good for us. On the other hand, it would give them a white source if they don't have a white source for like Displacer or something. Even so, I decide I'm just going to go ahead and quarter this, and I'm going to Fatal Push the Sky Spawner right now. So we'll do that. Just in case there's some kind of Remand shenanigans, we're going to cast it off of Breeding Pool. Remand would be pure crazy in this deck. And our opponent plays Engineered Explosives on 1. Okay, so probably saw the 1 here and just played Explosives on 1, so he can blow it up using this Eldrazi Scion, but that doesn't seem like a great use of your 1/1 to me. Worth noting though that our opponent did not have a third land. So actually, like in reality, our opponent couldn't have played Explosives on 2 and activated it, so we would have gotten to Fuse regardless. Now, if we hadn't quartered, it's worth noting, if we hadn't quartered the Eldrazi Temple, our opponent wouldn't have been able to play Explosives on 2 at all. So I'm not sure what was going on there, but it wouldn't have really made a difference as far as like our being able to fuse right now goes. And we draw a bunch of stuff, and our opponent scoops. So here we could have played another Ghost Quarter. Probably we would have Serum Visions and then made a decision from there. But regardless, that worked out pretty well for us. Game 2. Sideboarding for this matchup. So we want the Ruined Halos, for sure. We want the Blessed Alliance because Reality Smasher is a pain in the ass. I didn't bring in this extra Verdict. I could have brought in the extra Verdict. I'm not sure whether that's correct or not. Maybe. We have plenty of removal. And between that and Esper Charm, and, you know, people say that counters are bad against Ban Eldrazi. That is not my experience. Like, sometimes they have Cavern, and sure, like, that's fine. We have plenty of ways to answer a board. But I don't want to remove all of my counters, necessarily. I took out 1 Esper Charm here for the Blessed Alliance, and then 2 Spell Snare for the Ruined Halos. That could be wrong. We could cut a Logic Knot for a Supreme Verdict. That seems pretty good, too. This hand is not great. Not great, but I decided I'm going to keep it. We get to Serum Visions. We have Path, Snap, Path, theoretically. If we can get there, we can also try to set up our combo, which is going to be pretty good. And we draw Sram's Expertise, which is great. So we're going to go ahead and fetch white for the Srams. And what do we want here? Now we have 4 lands and double white. So we're in good shape. We can cast our combo if we don't get Thought-Knot Seared. We probably want a Verdict, and we probably don't want a Peer Through Depths. Opponent plays Ancient Stirrings, possibly trying to find a land. I guess, yeah, they got that Temple. Play a Brushland. And we're expecting Thought-Knot Seer. There's a Temple. Opponent does play Thought-Knot Seer. So we're going to go ahead and path that. Now he can take the Snap, or he can take the, to keep us from pathing something else. He could take the Verdict, or he could take Beck or Srams. Now, off of pathing the Seer, we draw Jar, so we can't take an Enabler anymore because we're going to be able to do that regardless. So he has to take Beck or Verdict, which is a pretty tough call for him. I think he probably wants to take Beck, which he does. And we are going to just, if our opponent plays a Reality Smasher, we're just going to let him hit us. Supreme Verdict is a reasonable answer to that, and I want to start ticking this jar up so we can do broken things. Like, if our opponent plays Smasher here and we tick jar up, we can snap past the Smasher, even if we go down a card, and we're still taking jar up towards Supreme Verdict, so I think that's pretty good. We're just going to take this hit. We draw Beck, which is excellent. And we see 2 paths and a logic nut. Now, over the course of this, we're going to be getting a lot of messages from our opponent. He was incredibly salty. Maybe he was tilted because of that explosives play. Although, as I said, the misplay didn't really necessarily affect the outcome of that. Although he could have set it to 0. It would have been better. That being said, yeah, he just like talked shit this whole match. I think, honestly, he was just trying to kind of get in our heads. Maybe he gets an advantage off that sometimes. But that's okay. That's okay. We don't mind if people want to play that Magic. So here, I decide to play another like white source so that we can path this. We're up a bunch of cards. We can discard one. We can path this and logic not whatever his other play is. And then we're going to be ticking up our Brain in a Jar to try to get to Verdict mana. So we let him swing. And I think Colonnade we don't really need here. We need our logic not. We need the path. We need the snap. We need the Verdict. I'd rather take an untapped land, which is also potentially a black source, even though we have jar out. Talisman of Progress into Thought Knots here. Instant counter. Opponent doesn't even have blue up if they brought in any counters. Our opponent is talking more shit, which is fine. At this point, I do decide to play a Colonnade. I'm going to swing. We assume our opponent doesn't have Smasher. Because of last turn, so we don't really need to have more lands available to us. Actually, Smasher, it wouldn't matter. I don't know why I even said that. But our opponent probably top decked a Smasher. Otherwise, they would have swung in last turn with 2. And he's going to swing again, and we're going to path it. If our opponent has a counter, our opponent has a counter. But he doesn't. That's good for us. Opponent plays Eldrazi Displacer. So we could deal with this or not. The question is whether at 10 life our opponent's going to commit more stuff to the board to try to kill us. Do we want to just not snap path this right now, which would mean also we couldn't take up jar to 3, and that's well worth noting. Or we could just get hit by the Displacer a couple times and we can just force him to burn his mana on killing our tokens. That seems pretty good since our strategy would ultimately be to kill our tokens anyway. If we draw a fetch like a Polluted Delta, we'll just go swamp path or push your Displacer, which is good. Peer through depths, fine draw. We're gonna swing for 4. Opponent kills some tokens and takes 2. So our opponent left up 3 mana. He could have taken 1 less damage there. And that tells me that our opponent might have a counter, might be looking to counter something that we're doing like Sroms, maybe on our main phase, possibly not understanding how Brain in a Jar works and that we would not be Sromsing main phase. But I guess he also knows we have a Verdict, so we could go like Sroms and hold up Verdict off of Jar or something. Now our opponent decides to flicker a token. We want to see if he's going to play anything here. Does not. We go to 4. I'm going to peer. I'm just taking this damage. That's okay. Okay, so we see Srom's Blessed Alliance and Beck. Now, we could take Srom's because that's pretty good value. However, we're probably going to activate Jar for Verdict soon, which is our 4 spot. So if we're doing that, then we're actually closer to Beck than we are to getting back to Srom's, right? So once Jar goes up to 4, it's just 1 more uptick until we can Beck again at 6. I'm going to take that. It's a good card anyway. Now we have a decision to make. So we don't draw the land we wanted, unfortunately, for this Displacer to force our opponent to play something else. We could Ruined Halo Displacer, which is generally bad, and force him to play something else that way. Or we could Snap Path Displacer. And that seems not terribly good to me. So I decide I'm just going to Ruined Halo the Displacer after this. This is maybe not the best call. Like, we could have Ruined Haloed, say, like Thought-Knot Seer or Reality Smasher Blind, but I would maybe rather path one of those in the end, or like Instant Speed Verdict them. Leave them, say it's a Seer, leave them with a difficult decision here. We're not going to name Drowner of Hope. It's not hasty and it doesn't interact with us directly. So I think between the three of those, like Displacer, Seer, and Smasher, I would rather take the real one, the one that's right here in front of me. That might be a mistake. It's possible. Our opponent taps a bunch of mana. Taps in a way, interestingly, that's not going to let him flicker Drowner of Hope without sacking a Scion. Not sure why that was happening. But at this point, I'm content to Supreme Verdicts. Start ticking our jar up toward Beck. The opponent hasn't given us any indication that he has counters. And he has plenty of reason to have creatures in hand, so Swamp is pretty good. It's a little awkward since we can't actually activate a Revolt at the moment, but that's okay. And our opponent plays, looks like Smasher. Smasher. So we can Snap Logic Knot this. I decided I'm just going to Snap Path it and discard the Fatal Push and tick up Beck Call. I think it's a little more likely our opponent is playing Negate or something along those lines as counterspell interaction. And maybe, you know, either way, I guess we get blown out. We could also just block with Colonnade to guarantee that we live. That's another option. That's in a way that's the safest option, but it's probably more likely our opponent has removal. I'm not sure. Regardless, I decided to Snap Path. We're going to discard Push because we're about to Beck Call. Now, we're in a weird spot here. So we're kind of assuming our opponent plays Hierarch. Nothing else. So doesn't seem to have any big threats. We're kind of assuming our opponent has like some kind of counter magic in hand. I can't imagine why they wouldn't have used it, but we really need this Beck Call to resolve. And for the moment, Colonnade is probably going to keep us alive through something. Our opponent's used 3 Smashers, so if our opponent plays like a Thought-Knot Seer, then we're kind of forced to use this. But otherwise, I think I actually tick this up and then don't Beck Call next turn. I think I take it all the way back down to 1 to try to find some kind of counter or answer and get a higher quality back. Regardless, take it up to 5. We do have the option if we really need to. I'm going to swing. Our opponent's not going to take this trade, I assume, but also not going to kill us with a Noble Hierarch. And now I decide, because we drew Logic Knot, that I'm going to Beck Call. So our opponent's probably going to play something to like counter this, and then we're going to Logic Knot it. If we hadn't drawn Logic Knot, as I said, we probably wouldn't have swung with the Snapcaster Mage. We probably would have just tried to wait and take this all the way down. It seems like our opponent's hand has a lot of air in it. And our opponent plays Disdainful Stroke. So this explains, I was not aware that this was an option for his list, but like I guess, maybe. But this explains why our opponent hasn't used it yet, right? So Disdainful Stroke couldn't hit any of the paths or verdicts or whatever that we were playing. It can hit Beck Call, and it could have hit Logic Knot incidentally. So if we had Logic Knotted that Reality Smasher, we would have been in a bad way because Logic Knot's converted mana cost goes up with the X value. So we're going to knot this for a bunch. And our opponent's talking more shit. And we draw some pretty reasonable cards. Our opponent doesn't play anything. If he played a creature there, we would have drawn more cards. We could have Snap Pathed something. He only has 1 Smasher left, but if he had another Smasher, we could have Snap Pathed it, and we would have drawn 2 cards, which would have balanced out the the card Disadvantage built into Reality Smasher because that design model is fantastic. So our opponent scoops. We go 4-1. I'm pretty happy with the way the list turned out. The 24 land serum, 4 Serum Visions, and 2 Pier actually seem to be pretty good. Pretty good. Who would have guessed that Michael Majors was a smart deck builder? I'm not convinced that I like it more than the 25 land Think Twice version, but I might. I'm coming off a long time playing this deck with a list that did less, right? That didn't have Sarams, didn't have those aggressive starts, had fewer of the combo pieces total by 1 at least, and didn't have pushes, right? Fewer answers. It was a pretty different deck. And maybe now that we can have more of kind of like an active role in the matchup, in various matchups anyway, maybe Serum Visions and Pier is pretty good. I'm going to try it again. I'm going to keep playing it for a little while, see how I feel, but aside from that kind of ridiculous first match, which maybe I punted, maybe I didn't. I'm not sure. Like, we might not have been able to win anyway. I think there were a couple moments when I made huge mistakes. One of them, especially besides the negate thing, which is obviously retarded. I didn't notice that our opponent only had 2 cards in hand at some point, and I didn't Esper Charm him. So if I had done that, he couldn't have done the Bring to Light play for Glen Elendra, and we might have been able to get somewhere. As it stands, we went 4-1, so that's pretty good, and hopefully I'll bring y'all some more content soon. Let me know any feedback, any kinds of lists y'all are running, and I'm really happy to hear input, and I'm glad some people are interested in the deck. Cheers.